My sister-in-law handed me a gift at a Christmas dinner. Inside was a signed divorce packet from my husband. She smirked. He belongs with me. He stayed silent. I smiled and said, then you'll love mine. She opened it, saw the truth, and screamed. The room exploded in stunned silence. It was supposed to be a warm Christmas Eve in our Denver home. The tree glittered in the corner, soft carols played from the speakers, and the fireplace crackled as we gathered for dinner. My husband, Daniel, and I had been married for nearly 8 years. I thought we were content. Maybe not perfect, but nothing that screamed betrayal. His sister, Claire, had always been around more than I liked. She called Daniel for everything. Every decision. Every weekend. Every argument. She was always there. But I chalked it up to them being close. Lifelong siblings, right? I should have trusted my gut. After dinner, we sat around exchanging gifts, laughter coating the room like powdered sugar. Claire walked over, a perfectly wrapped silver box in her hand. For you, she said, her smile too wide, her voice too sweet. I took it, offered a quiet thank you, and unwrapped it slowly. Inside was a divorce packet. My breath caught in my throat. My hands froze mid-motion. And then I saw it, Daniel's signature already inked on the dotted line. The paper crinkled in my trembling hands. My chest tightened. Daniel wouldn't even look at me. He just stared at the carpet, lips pressed into a hard line, guilt, or was it shame, clouding his face. I turned to Claire, eyes burning. She was smiling. He belongs with me, she whispered. The room fell into a silence so heavy it throbbed in my ears. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. I blinked, struggling to breathe, trying to understand if this was some twisted joke. But no one laughed. Daniel said nothing. I wanted to cry. To scream. To collapse into the kind of sobs that make your ribs ache. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Oh, I said, standing slowly, deliberately. Then you're going to love my gift. Claire's smile faltered. I reached into my purse and pulled out a thin manila envelope. Handed it to her, calm as snowfall. Merry Christmas. She hesitated but opened it. Her eyes scanned the first page, then the second, and her expression crumbled like wet ash. Then she screamed. It wasn't a startled scream. It was primal. A scream of someone who just watched the ground vanish beneath them. Everyone in the room froze. Daniel shot up, snatching the papers from her hands. His face went white. I folded my arms and stared at them both. Because what Claire found in that envelope wasn't just proof of their disgusting affair. It was the beginning of their end. Claire's scream rang out like a shattering mirror, piercing, raw, unrestrained. Everyone turned toward her, wide-eyed and silent, the festive air evaporating like mist under fire. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched. Watched the way her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages in disbelief, the panic spreading across her face like cracks in glass. Watched how her mouth opened and closed without words, like she couldn't believe I had gotten there first. Daniel rushed over, his face draining of color as he snatched the envelope from her. His eyes darted over the documents, faster, faster, his breath catching. What did you do? He barked, but I heard it, beneath the anger, the sharp edge of fear. I said nothing. I wanted him to sit in the terror. To feel the weight of what it meant when you underestimate the woman you tried to destroy. Claire turned to him, voice shaking. You told me it was handled. You said she'd never find out. My mother-in-law finally stood, the confusion and concern on her face beginning to twist into something darker. What's going on? She demanded. Still, I said nothing. Daniel kept reading, his eyes wide now, jaw slack. Because the first few pages were just the appetizer, bank records, payments made from our joint account to Claire, hotel invoices, travel bookings, wire transfers. My money. My name. Their betrayal. But it got worse. The next page, a legal notice. My lawyer's letterhead, bold and unmistakable. I was suing them both. For fraud. For identity theft. For embezzlement. Claire's breathing was shallow now, her entire body shaking. Her hands gripped the pages like they might somehow protect her, like she could stop the truth from spreading any further. But it was too late. I had spent weeks preparing for this moment. I had hired the best investigator I could afford. Dug into every bank transaction, every suspicious contract, every forged signature. I had taken screenshots, pulled surveillance footage, printed emails, recorded calls. Every single lie they told, they left fingerprints. And I followed them all the way to the truth. Daniel looked up at me, eyes wide. You can't do this. We're married. That money is. I cut him off, calm and clear. No, Daniel. That money is mine. That business is mine. My name is on everything. You didn't just betray me. You broke the law. I crossed my legs, leaned back in the chair like I was settling into a throne. Claire looked like she might be sick. And in that moment, after years of being spoken over, dismissed, treated like I was disposable, I felt something rise inside me. Not vengeance. Power. And I wasn't done yet. I didn't plan to say another word. The document spoke for me, louder than any scream ever could. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because humiliation shouldn't happen in shadows. Claire still sat trembling on the couch, clutching the divorce packet like it could shield her from the truth crashing around her. Daniel, my husband, was pacing in short, panicked bursts, holding the envelope like it had caught fire in his hands. The room buzzed with unease. The rest of the family didn't know whether to speak or flee. I reached into my bag again and pulled out a second gift, small, black, and simple. A USB drive. I held it out to Daniel's father, George, the only one in the room who still had some semblance of dignity. Would you do the honors? His brows drew together, but he took the drive and walked slowly to the large TV on the wall. With shaking hands, he inserted it into the port, and within seconds, the screen lit up. And there it was. Claire and Daniel, caught in the glow of hotel lobby surveillance footage, arms touching, lips grazing, eyes locked with a hunger no sibling-in-law should ever share. A second clip played, the two of them entering a room together, hand in hand. No words. No explanations. Just evidence. Gasps filled the room like a chorus of shattered glass. Daniel's mother clapped a hand over her mouth. George stiffened, eyes locked on the screen, rage bubbling just beneath his stony exterior. Claire's scream was softer this time, less fear, more grief. She covered her face, as if not seeing the footage could somehow erase it from everyone else's memory. But it was too late. The truth was out, raw and undeniable. Daniel spun around, face flushed with panic. Where did you get this? How long have you? I cut him off. That's not the question you should be asking. The question was, how long did you think you could get away with this? 4 months, I'd watched them, felt it. The late nights. The guarded phones. The silence after I walked into rooms. The lingering glances. It was all there, hiding behind excuses and fake laughter. They underestimated me. Thought I was too trusting, too soft, too blind. They forgot one thing. I built a business from the ground up. I know how to read patterns. I know how to follow paper trails. And most importantly, I know how to wait. Claire was crumbling beside Daniel, her hands trembling, her mouth murmuring nonsense. You said it was safe. You promised. Daniel looked like he'd been gutted. The air had been sucked out of the room, and now everyone saw them for what they were. Not lovers. Not victims. Liars. Thieves. Cowards. I stood slowly and smoothed my dress. Merry Christmas, I said, calm as snow falling on fire. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come with thunder. Sometimes, it arrives wearing red lipstick and a smile. The moment the knock echoed through the house, the air shifted, like the room itself had taken a breath, bracing for impact. Another knock. Louder. Then a voice, sharp and authoritative. Denver PD opened the door. Daniel froze. Claire whimpered, her body curled into herself like she was trying to disappear. George and Elaine, his parents, stood paralyzed, their eyes darting between me and their children as if unsure which version of reality to believe. I crossed my arms, calm and resolute. Daniel, are you going to get that? Or should I? His face had drained of color. You called the cops? I called the law, I replied, voice steady. You broke it. Claire gripped Daniel's arm, her voice cracking. You promised. You promised this wouldn't happen. He yanked his arm away, his panic starting to boil over. Shut up, Claire. Her face twisted with betrayal. Don't you dare blame this on me. We did this together. Before either could spin another lie, George stepped between them. Someone better start explaining. Now. No one moved. No one spoke. So I did. I stood tall, my voice cutting clean through the tension. Daniel and Claire have been having an affair. They've been stealing from my company, money, documents, forged signatures. They laundered funds through shell accounts. And now, law enforcement is involved. Gasps spread like wildfire. Elaine looked like she might faint. George's jaw clenched so hard I thought he might shatter a tooth. Then came the third knock. This time, I opened the door myself. 2 officers stood there, firm and expressionless. "Daniel Carter," one of them said. He hesitated. "We have a warrant for your arrest," the officer continued, stepping forward. "You're being charged with fraud, identity theft, and financial misconduct." Daniel bolted, a last desperate instinct. He barely made it 2 steps before he was tackled to the ground, arms twisted behind his back. Claire screamed, scrambling toward him, trying to pull the officers away. "Stop. You don't understand. This is her fault." I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "Of course it is. Because nothing is ever your fault." Claire turned to me, red-faced, eyes wild with fury. "You ruined everything." "No," I said, stepping aside as one of the officers escorted her away. "I just made sure you paid for it." George stood in the doorway, unmoving. Elaine sobbed quietly in the corner. No one tried to stop what was happening. No one even protested. Because they knew. The evidence was real. The consequences were earned. And as Daniel was led out of the house in handcuffs, head bowed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge. Not triumph. Relief. Because the nightmare was finally ending, and I wasn't the one being dragged away. The house was silent when I walked out. Claire's sobs still echoed faintly behind me. Elaine, her face blotchy with tears, had collapsed onto the couch, shaking her head like if she denied it long enough, it would all go away. George hadn't said another word, but his eyes told the truth, not rage, not denial, just shame. The kind that swallows you whole when you realize your own child is a stranger. But I didn't carry any of it with me. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. I drove home alone that night, the cold Denver air brushing against my cheeks as I cracked the window open, letting the silence settle in. Not the silence of being ignored. Not the silence of a woman being erased in her own marriage. This silence was mine. It was peace. It was power. A week later, Daniel took a plea deal. 5 years in prison, no bail. The charges were too solid, the evidence too overwhelming. His lawyer knew it. The judge knew it. Daniel finally knew it, too. He didn't fight it in court. He didn't even look at me. Claire tried to challenge the civil suit, tried to convince the court she was manipulated, misled, in love. But she had no ground left to stand on. She lost everything, reputation, credibility, even her job when the scandal reached her workplace. Her attorney stopped returning her calls after the court denied her motion to dismiss. By the time it was over, she was bankrupt. She vanished from Denver shortly after that. And me? I sold the house. Every room in that place held memories I didn't want to carry anymore. I had built a life inside its walls, only to be betrayed in every corner of it. I packed my bags, transferred my business, and moved across the country to New York. I rented a brownstone in Brooklyn with big windows, hardwood floors, and a kitchen that smelled like beginnings. My business, the one Daniel tried to steal, flourished. I hired more staff. Landed 2 major clients. I started mentoring young women entrepreneurs, teaching them how to safeguard their success, how to recognize the red flags I once ignored, how to protect themselves in a world that still expects women to smile while they're being cut down. I started laughing again. Real laughter. The kind that makes your ribs ache and your eyes tear up, not from pain, but from remembering who you are underneath the scars. I traveled to Italy for the first time. Took myself out to dinner. Learned to sleep on the right side of the bed again. I didn't date, not yet. I needed to fall back in love with myself first. Some nights, I'd find myself staring out the window, wondering how I let it go on for so long, how I let Daniel silence me, how I convinced myself I needed his family's approval to be enough. And then I'd smile, because I knew why. Because like so many women, I was taught that love means enduring. But now? Now I knew the truth. Love isn't endurance. Love is freedom. Love is choosing yourself, especially when no one else does. Daniel never loved me. Not really. He loved what I gave him, safety, success, status. Claire didn't love him either. She loved having what wasn't hers. They didn't destroy me. They revealed me. And I had no intention of hiding again. The last I heard, Daniel's parents sold their house and moved out of state. No forwarding address. No apologies. Not that I needed one. Their silence was its own kind of confession. A month after the trial ended, I received a letter in the mail. No return address. No signature. Just 5 words on a single page. You were never supposed to win. I laughed. Because they were right. I wasn't supposed to win. I was supposed to vanish quietly. Be replaced. Be broken. But I didn't. I rebuilt. I roared. And now, when I look in the mirror, I no longer see the woman who sat quietly at family dinners, who swallowed her voice to keep the peace, who smiled while everything burned around her. Now, I see fire in her eyes. And she belongs to no one but herself.